being broadcast online and throughout Parliament buildings. I just would like to welcome anyone who's watching online today, and I would just remind you if you could ensure that your mobile phones are muted and that no photography or recording of the meeting is allowed. So if members are content, we'll proceed with the agenda. So members, we have got apologies today from Claire Sugden and Carolyn Killen, and I think everybody else is here. So any declarations of interest to declare?
Yes, just in case I need to declare today, a family member on the Arts Council board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so chairperson's business then. So 3.1 Rosetta Trust Historical Institutional Abuse Memorial. Members, I'm going to refer you to pages 6 to 10 of your pack. Just to advise that the correspondence in the pack details email exchanges between Rosetta Trust and the Executive Office in relation to the final wording of the HIA Memorial. As members will be aware, the unveiling of the memorial will take place on Friday the 20th of February 2026. And just to advise, as the final wording has been agreed, the date of the unveiling of the memorial has been confirmed, although I don't think we have a time yet.
No, not yet, Chair.
I'm just going to seek your views on how best to move forward in terms of supporting victims and survivors in the future. Any thoughts on this?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Sure. I very much appreciate the incredible sensitivities around all of these issues, and of course we're aware that some organisations have had difficulty with the wording, but more importantly, there are those that may feel that it's not appropriate for them to attend any ceremony, mainly because they feel that the appropriateness of the previous apology given doesn't match the issue for them. Could I suggest that at this stage that the Executive Office give very serious consideration to the event on the 20th being one where again, and perhaps differently, that apology should be given, and hopefully with some to and froing between the parties, that between the various groups, that might lead to some form of understanding by the Executive Office as to why the previous apology what didn't satisfy those groups, and that there is perhaps one further opportunity on the 20th of February for the Executive to come forward with that apology in a form of words and in a genuinely meaningful way that will express, because the ministers and the people of today are not the people who created the circumstances of the past, but it is their predecessors in this building, it is their predecessors in public office and in public service who created those problems in the past. And so that apology should be coming from that perspective. So I just want to encourage the Executive Office, who I trust are listening today, to give serious consideration to the event on the 20th and to allow that to be an opportunity to make those contacts in the background and to encourage as many of those organisations and groups to be present for what will be a very poignant and very difficult set circumstance.
Thank you. I suppose I'll read on through my brief a bit because I think I'm going to touch upon that again, but I have another suggestion in terms of action, and it's around the correspondence from Survivors Together, and you'll find this, members, on page 3 of the table pack. So Survivors Together has released a statement outlining that they will not be attending the unveiling of the HIA Memorial. In their statement, they outline how they believe the wording of the plaque regarding the public apology should not be included. They go on to say that they did not and do not accept the apology presented by Stormont officials in March 2022 as the state apology recommended by Sir Anthony Hart and promised and expected by victims and survivors. And I think it's that distinction between party leaders and government ministers. So I think we could maybe note this item and agree to forward the correspondence from Survivors Together to the Executive Office, potentially with that suggestion. Remembers being
to plea to them just to reconsider the circumstances,
yeah,
and to take this as an opportunity to reach out.
Yeah, maybe in terms of the formatting of the event on the 20th
Yes.
of February, in terms of maybe restating the apology this time from First and Deputy First Minister as heads of state as opposed to as party leaders, as was the previous apology. There's a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I'm very content with that. Just think it's worth noting. A couple of weeks ago, I think it was the First Minister, when raising this issue, gave a needed another apology read into the record. But I think it's important that we share those correspondence with the Executive Office, and I think the Deputy Chair articulates that well.
Okay, I just have one other suggestion, and that was in relation to the correspondence we received from the office, the Executive Office, and that was in relation to the Belfast Stories and the role of Belfast City Council in terms of the memorialisation programme. And I just wonder, could we write to Belfast City Council to ask for an update on that work? Members okay with that? In agreement? Okay. Any other suggestions or thoughts in terms of this plaque unveiling? No. Okay. Okay, members, item 3.3, I'm just going to refer to the debate just yesterday on clerical child abuse, and just I think most people in the room spoke on that. I thought it was a very important but very dignified debate, and I think that the response from the department gave some comfort to those victims and survivors who were watching online. As some of you may recall, the Junior Minister Riley did suggest that we write to the department and ask for departmental officials to come and provide us with an briefing in closed session. I think that was maybe what that was. Are people content that we try to schedule that in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And then just lastly, under Chair's business, I just wanted to just give up members an opportunity to speak to the horrendous events that Chloe Rutherford and Darian Moore and their 3 children have had to endure in Derry in recent days. The attack on their home, their property, the stress they've caused to the children, and I just think it's absolutely abhorrent. I think that it would be useful if we as a committee wrote to the Executive Office just to try and get a readout of what's happening in terms of grassroots delivery, in terms of communities in transition or any work that's going on in that area, and if there's going to be any additional work to try and deal with this scourge and this toxicity around the sectarianism and the hate that motivated that attack. So I'll go to Deputy Chair and then I'll bring in the local rep. Thank you.
Would Chair, just to reiterate your words, the issue has been once again Northern Ireland all over the media again today in respect of this horrific abuse of a family, and I think it's right and proper that we have been working, and the Executive Office have been working hard over many years, putting resource and public funds into combating this type of behaviour and attempting to encourage communities to understand one another and to live in all of these shared spaces together. And sometimes you really just wonder why we're failing to get through with those messages. So I would encourage us to write, as you've said, to the Executive Office and just to take a pause and review the effectiveness of how these issues are being tackled.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Chair, I represent the area that Darren and Chloe live in, and it is a shared space. And that is what is so concerning. And their new housing, and it's beautiful housing, lots of young families live in it. And so, in many ways, quite unexpected, because a lot of, community work has taken place in and around that area as well, in order to ensure that the new housing was shared housing. And it's a home that has been adapted for their children, and they have children with special needs as well. So, I really feel sorry for Darren and Chloe. They were in contact with my office on Monday prior to the actual attack on Monday evening, because they were afraid. And there was a series of attacks and sectarian accusations and that had happened in the previous days. So, they were concerned for their safety, and they had every right to be so whenever the events on Monday evening unfolded. And it will have, we talked yesterday about childhoods, and what happens in childhood carries on into adulthood, and those wee kids will not forget that. It's very, very hard to forget that, in the safety of your own home, somebody has come and attacked you, and just the viciousness of a paint attack and a window coming in. And they were lucky the kids were actually in the hall, And that, so look, just a great deal of sympathy and that to the family, and it's very difficult for them to get up and move home.
Yes.
And start again.
Yes.
And you know, when anybody moves into a new house in a new area as well, you know, you put in new floors and you put in new, you know, your new furniture and that fits the place. Like the expense of it and, you know, the security of their future is all really quite up in the air at the minute. So look, I think it would be very beneficial. But again, as I say, this new house was shared space. A lot of money had gone into it, a lot of work with the Housing Association had gone in to actually, I've been at meetings prior to this, like months and years ago, in order to make sure that it was that type of housing, and all of a sudden just a few bad eggs, and that really is the truth. So we need to be very careful in and around all of that, and certainly I would be supporting your suggestion, Chair.
Any people, I suppose people concur with that. Are you happy that we write to the department then? And yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks everybody. Okay, members, moving on then, draft minutes then. So just to inform you that the draft minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday the 21st of January 2026 are on pages 11 to 16 of the pack. And just check if you're content that the minutes are a true reflection of the proceedings. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and sign those. Okay, so matters arising, just to remind you that I met with Joe McVeigh, the newly appointed Commissioner for Victims and Survivors for Northern Ireland last Wednesday for an informal introduction prior to his evidence session with the committee on Wednesday the 11th of February, and a note of this meeting can be found in your pack, pages 18 to 19. Okay, content to note this item? Okay, so members, going to move on now to the final consideration of the committee report into the inquiry, Mother and Baby Institutions, Magdalene Laundries and Workhouses and Redress Scheme Bill. I'm going to refer you to pages 21 to 26 of your pack for the clerk's brief, pages 109 to 111 of the pack for the draft news release regarding the publication of the report and the committee stage ending, and pages 5 to 86 of the pack for the copy of the final draft report. Okay, members, just to advise that any typographical or formatting errors in the draft report will be amended at proofing stage, but before it is circulated to all MLAs and published on the committee web page. I just remind that the report must be agreed at today's meeting, as the committee's final stage closes tomorrow, Friday the 30th of January 2026. Okay, sorry, day after tomorrow. So if you're content with the amendments to the report included in the meeting and table pack, highlighted in red and summarised in the clerk's brief, we will go ahead and possibly discuss any proposed amendments that the committee has added since our closed session. Any?
Chair, the committee can choose if it wishes to discuss any amendments that were brought forward since the last meeting in closed session, if they would prefer, and then move back into open for a final agreement, or it can be done in open session, whichever members would wish to do.
I think we also then just need to get agreement then that Hansard starts recording what we started saying.
If we remain in open session, yes.
If we remain in open session. Okay. I was content with the amendments that came forward from the DUP. I thought they were fair enough. Didn't have any issue with any of them, actually. But the others want to go into closed session to go through them.
Unless we have to, Chair, but
I'm happy enough to do it in open session.
Okay, that's straightforward enough. Okay, members, so we're now going to have the formal agreement of the committee report. So the title page, committee membership and powers, table of contents and list of abbreviations. So everybody got the report open okay in front of me? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put the question then. Are members content with that the title page, committee membership and powers, table of contents and list of abbreviations pages stand part of the report?
Agreed.
Okay, so the executive summary, I'm going to refer you to paragraphs 1 to 7, and I'm going to put the question, are members content that the executive summary at paragraphs 1 to 7 stand part of the report?
Agreed.
Okay, introduction, and these are paragraphs 8 to 18. Are members content that the introduction section at paragraphs 8 to 18 stand part of the report?
Good.
Okay, recommendations are found on paragraphs 19 to 41. Are members content that the recommendation section at paragraphs 19 to 41 stand part of the report?
Agreed.
Preparation work, I'm just going to refer you to paragraphs 42 to 58. Okay. Are members content that the preparation work at paragraphs 42 to 58 stand part of the report?
Agreed.
Call for evidence, just refer you to paragraphs 59 to 170. Just letting everybody catch up a bit. Okay. Are members content that the call for evidence at paragraphs 59 to 170 stand part of the report?
Oh, sorry, yes,
Yeah,
59,
that's okay.
sorry, yes.
That's okay.
No, that's okay.
Agreed, okay. Written submissions, and you can find these in paragraphs 62 to 170, is that right?
171.
171 to 328, apologies.
Sorry.
171 to 328.
Okay, apologies.
Yes, sorry.
Apologies for reading things about. Sorry, so just to be clear, it's paragraphs 171 to 328, okay.
That's it, yes.
Okay, members going to put the question. Are members content that the oral evidence at paragraphs 171 to 328 stand part of the report? Agreed. Summary of roundtable events. Refer you to paragraphs 329 to 338. Okay, I'm going to put the question. Are members
Not 330.
3:30.
329 should have been our
329.
last.
Is
We agreed before.
3:39. Was it
Right.
somewhere
That's
around?
more probably of a typographical error, is it?
It's just numbering, but we will sort that out. Yes, so sorry. Roundtable events 3:30 to
3:30?
yes,
339.
339.
339, okay, we're bounced along.
We just bounced along one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, are members content that the summary of roundtable events at paragraphs 330 to 339 stand part of the report?
Yeah.
Okay, that must be 340.
And yeah, 340 to 348.
Are the other issues?
So the next one is other issues. Yes, is 340 to 3. Where are we? 340 to
369.
369.
Okay.
Yes, it's just moved on one.
Okay. Okay, so other issues considered by the committee found at paragraphs 340 to 369. Okay.
Read.
Okay, so I'm going to put it to members. Are members content that other issues considered by the committee at paragraphs 339 to 340 to 369 stand part of the report?
Read.
Okay.
And then clause by clause is 370 to
447.
447.
447, so we'll find a paragraph.
Yeah, it's come back.
Okay, so clause by clause deliberations and decisions by the committee, and you'll find these in paragraphs 370 to 447. Okay, so I'm going to put the question, are members content that clause by clause deliberations and decisions considered by the committee at paragraphs 370 to 447 stand part of the report? Okay, appendices, members going to refer you to those in the report, and I'm just going to ask, are you content that appendices stand part of the report?
Read.
Okay, so members, the final report, subject to just those wee typographical issues, has now been agreed by the committee. And I'm now going to seek your agreement for the report to be published on the committee's webpage on Thursday, 29th of January 2026, and issued to all MLAs. Great. I'm going to seek your agreement for you to approve the draft minutes of this meeting for inclusion in Appendix 3 to enable the report to be finalised. The draft minutes will be replaced by a final version of the minutes once agreed by the committee at next week's meeting. It's just so that we can indicate that we went through the report section by section. Is that okay? Okay, seek your agreement to issue an electronic copy of the bill report to all the organisations and individuals who provided evidence to the committee on the bill, and again that will take place tomorrow, Thursday the 29th of January. Great. Okay, I'm just going to ask members if they have any views or comments on the draft press release, and you'll find this on pages 109 to 111 of the main pack. Okay, give us a second to read that. Okay.
Yes.
Any others? Okay. Thank you. No amendments then?
No
Good job. Thank you. Okay. Members, just to advise then that the committee stage will formally end on Friday the 29th of January 2026 and the consideration stage date will be confirmed by the department in the coming weeks. And just would like to thank everybody who has contributed to the bill, in particular victims and survivors who have waited decades for recognition, truth and redress. So thank you everybody, and thank you again to the committee team here. Okay, members, we're moving on to item 7, the oral briefing, update from the 3 overseas bureaus. I'm going to continue to seek your agreement that Hansard record this evidence session. Okay, thank you.
We'll just pause for a second.
Just pause for a
We'll
second, we'll just get them all up
Get them
online.
up on the screen.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
Just in the meantime then, I'm just going to refer you to pages 113 to 116 of your pack for the clerk's brief, and then pages 117 to 127 of the pack for a briefing paper from the bureaus. So, there's one online.
They should be coming up one at a time here.
Chair, could I ask what way for allocating time for questions today? I would have questions for each of the 3 bureaus. I just need to be mindful of what time we're being allocated.
So there is an hour for the session as a whole.
Bearing in mind we're starting early as well.
We are. So it's up to members how they wish to allocate it. I would suggest that if we have an hour, then that would be 7 or 8 minutes per member if you wanted to take the full time, depending on how long officials wish to speak at the beginning.
And the extra 20 minutes for starting early.
If required.
Okay.
If nobody else is wanting them, I'm happy to take the 20.
Okay. Welcome online, everybody. So we have Kerry Curran, who's the Director of the Northern Ireland Bureau in China, Aodhán Connolly, Director of the Office of the Northern Ireland Executive in Brussels, and then Richard Cushnie, who is the Director Councillor of the Northern Ireland Bureau in North America. You're all very welcome to committee. Welcome back to Kerry and Aodhán and Richard. It's great to see you all online. I'm just going to wonder if you could all maybe make some opening remarks, please. Thank you. I'm not sure who wants to go first.
I will start, if it's okay with you, Chair. Delighted to be back with you. A lot has happened since the last time we were here. I suppose, though, since we have some new members of the committee, I'll quickly run through a little bit of what we do. So our office, the Office of the Northern Ireland Executive in Brussels, it supports all of the executive departments in their engagement with the EU. In fact, within the team, there are colleagues who are posted from DERA and the Department of Justice alongside TEO officials, which shows the importance that those departments place on our work. The engagement includes directly supporting visits that members and senior officials can meet with counterparts on their policy priorities or hold events to showcase areas of innovation from Northern Ireland. We also work at building relationships with EU contacts outside of those formal structures, and that's perhaps some of the most important work that we do, because this provides an opportunity to gather information that can support more formal engagement, as well as keeping ministers and Northern Ireland civil service colleagues aware of any issues that have or may have an impact on Northern Ireland. That's particularly important around the Windsor Framework issues, as early identification of issues provides for more scope for management and mitigation. I know you were all avidly waiting for it, but we issued the last edition of the Brussels report a few days ago, and that covers the activities of the office between October and December. And you'll also have received an overview of our work in the written brief submitted in advance of today. However, I just wanted to highlight a little bit of our work since our previous appearance. On the cultural side and on that networking side, we've been promoting Northern Ireland, which is a key role of our office. Our Brussels platform, which is jointly funded by the Arts Council and offers local artists and performers an opportunity to perform and promote their work in Brussels, happened in September. We had one of those events, as I said, in September, the Culture Night. We hosted Belfast comedian Jim McKeever and also launched an exhibition of winners and finalists from the Bradley Prize for Young Artists. On the economic side, As you know, we're co-located with Invest NI and work closely with them. We've also done a lot of work over this term with our universities and other bodies who are interested in Horizon Europe funding, particularly on the Horizon Europe opportunities. Now, that's just a flavour of the work that we do. I want to leave ample time for your questions, so I will pass on to Richard.
Okay, thank you, Aidan. Go ahead, please, Richard. Thank you.
Sorry, we had this great behind the scenes. Apologies, Chair, that we'll travel east. So,
okay.
Hello to you all from Beijing. It's very nice to be back with the committee again, particularly during a very busy time for us at the Bureau when we have, as I'm sure you'll be aware, the Prime Minister visiting our offices here in Beijing at the moment. So again, just to give you all a little flavour of what we've been doing since we were last with the committee, and a bit of a flavour of our purpose out here. So the role of the Bureau really is to support the delivery of Northern Ireland's economic vision, to enhance our reputation and build our strategic partnerships. And we work with our diaspora to amplify Northern Ireland's voice and impact. We work on building and developing our relationships with all levels of government here in China, centrally, mostly here from Beijing, provincially, and with municipal governments at a city level, with the aim of identifying and furthering opportunities in economic, educational, and tourism sectors. So the Bureau works closely with partners across government and other organisations such as Invest NI to maximise our impact and to deliver good value for money. The Bureau's work has focused on a number of areas since my last appearance at this committee, and specifically improving cultural understanding with Chinese representatives, university and regional college partnership developments, and sectoral export growth opportunities. One of the key events in the last months since we've last been before committee took place in December when the Minister for the Economy, Dr. Kiva Archibald, visited China to undertake a comprehensive engagement programme across several cities, I think 4 in total. And these engagements highlighted and promoted Northern Ireland's trade, our education and tourism opportunities, and included an event delivered in partnership with the Northern Ireland film industry to provide Northern Ireland film screening and creative industry sector opportunities. And specifically, it showcased Studio Ulster, Ulster University and Northern Ireland Screen, as well as supporting and facilitating visits from ministers, which don't happen as often as I would like, and senior officials, and business representatives. The Bureau plays a key role in representing Northern Ireland's position in UK government structures. So I represent Northern Ireland at China Board of Management meetings and at weekly UK Ambassador and Deputy Head of Mission meetings. So this engagement plays an important role in making sure that we are connecting to upcoming events, initiatives, opportunities, and that we in Northern Ireland can avail of these to showcase Northern Ireland's offering in front of relevant organisations and individuals here in China, such as the Prime Minister's visit that's taking place at the moment. The Bureau also engages on a regular basis with other partners across government, so the UK Department for Business and Trade, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the British Council, UKRI, for example. And as we look ahead to 2026 and another busy year, we're planning at the moment some roundtable discussions and a diaspora event at the Bureau offices, which will form part of a wider programme focused on St Patrick's Day celebrations. We're also currently working to secure Northern Ireland University participation in the UK-China Education Summit, which we had hoped would be held alongside the Prime Minister's visit, but it's likely to be held in late March or early April this year. And we'll be supporting Queen's and Ulster University through this process. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kerry. Go ahead, please, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to be back at the committee. Since our appearance in May, we've continued to develop and improve how we deliver for Northern Ireland in our most important external market. We have strengthened our engagement with departments, local councils, organisations like Invest NI, Tourism Ireland and universities. We've continued to open doors, create opportunities, convert these opportunities into impact. While some outcomes can happen quickly, others take time and need a longer term approach. The Bureau builds trust and invests in relationships that deliver sustainable benefits over time. We've expanded Northern Ireland's networks to the US and Canada, strengthening our bipartisan relationships with Republican and Democratic members of Congress, the State Department, key stakeholders in Canada, universities, chambers of commerce, locations outside of DC, and importantly, next generation leaders who will shape future policy and partnerships in North America. We also help our North American stakeholders who sometimes only think of Northern Ireland through the prism of the peace process or don't think of us at all, consider the opportunities that Northern Ireland has to offer as a place to live, work, study, and invest. I know the committee was particularly interested last time on communications. Since June, we have increased our LinkedIn engagement by 60%, Instagram by 30%, and X by 10%. We're monitoring this growth to understand what is working well so we can tailor content to expand awareness of Northern Ireland's opportunities. Looking ahead, I wanted to foreground 3 particular initiatives. One is we're working with the National Committee on American Foreign Policy to bring their Northern Ireland Emerging Leaders Programme to Washington, DC, to explore the policy initiatives that those next generation leaders are going to be developing across topics aligned with the Programme for Government. We are planning a Northern Ireland Tech and Innovation Conference in DC to highlight Northern Ireland's strengths in AI, fintech, and cybersecurity. And most significantly, at the moment, we're deep in preparing for St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick's Week, and the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence to celebrate our shared history and use this as a platform for future opportunities. This is a particularly unique opportunity, having those two grand events coming together to tell the story of Northern Ireland's range of contributions from all sectors of society across a long period of time with the United States. I think the committee will be aware, as we all are, that the operating environment in the US is changing, but the Bureau remains committed to ensuring that we work through that, with that, to maximise every opportunity for Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and thank you all for being succinct in your opening remarks. It gives us more time for the questions. So my first question is really to all 3 of you, and it's in relation to recent media coverage around the spend on hospitality. I think across all the bureaus, and I think admittedly Washington was maybe the highest spender, and I just want to get a readout from all 3 of you in terms of what sort of cost-benefit analysis you conduct when you are organising these sorts of events, and probably more importantly for us as a committee is whether any conversations have taken place with departmental officials in recent weeks in terms of the budget going forward, whether there's new policy in place or new guidance or restrictions in terms of how money is spent on hospitality events. So maybe start with you, Aodhán, please.
Yeah, I suppose over the past 5 years, the hospitality expenditure by our bureau, it's a strategic investment in access, influence, relationship building, directly supporting programme for government objectives and actually delivering on it. That spend that was talked about covers 3 bureau and 3 different international environments over 5 years. When annualized, it's modest and tightly targeted. I feel, having been in the private sector for so long, it completely surprises me how much colleagues are able to do, and our colleagues here in Brussels as well, begging, stealing, borrowing, and making sure that there is value for money. And that value is really based around the way that it allows Northern Ireland to convene decision makers efficiently. You get a lot of people in the one room at the one time, and the right people at the right time. That's how influence is used, are built and used, and that's how maintaining trusted networks happens. And that's what we need, especially for long-term economic and political benefit. All of the spending follows strict public sector controls, approvals, the transparency requirements. there is, of course, conversations. We have ongoing conversations about budget, as we do each and every year. I think where small jurisdictions like ourselves differ is that we cannot keep up with the Joneses, and we don't spend comparatively with other regions, other countries. But what we do have is something that is not nice to have, entertaining, or just meals, as someone called it. It's a tool of access, convening power, relationship maintenance in places where decisions are shaped and used properly. It buys you time with the right people, the right format, the right moment. I did hear someone say that it was simply meals, which kind of underdoes what we do. So to describe it as just hospitality or just meals would be to describe the Assembly's work as just voting. In both cases, it overlooks the preparation, the relationships, and the influence that make outcomes possible. So just as the committee and as members make a difference through that preparation and through that hard work, I think we do the same through the work that we do in hospitality.
Thank you, Ian. So Richard or Kerry, do you want to add to that and give me a bit of context around engagement with the department on this matter? Thank you.
Yeah, just to say, I agree with what Aidan has described. Obviously, each of the three environments is a bit different. You know, DC, Washington, North America is uniquely competitive environment, higher costs, and a higher frequency of high-level engagement to ensure that level of access. I also want to stress, as Aodhán did as well, all our spend is compliant with NICS rules and processes. You know, it's approved, it's purposeful, it's there, it's fully transparent in terms of what we're doing with it, and it's designed to deliver that sort of access and engagement and profile for Northern Ireland. And we rigorously assess that every time we get invitations to sponsor or to host events or to engage, and every time we rigorously assess it against how does this deliver for Northern Ireland, what opportunity does that provide for us, what access does that give, and we maintain close contact with Belfast all the time on ensuring that those processes are in place and are working.
Okay, thank you. Kerry, have you anything to add, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So well, obviously, I think Aodhán and Richard have covered most of it there in terms of our processes. But just to note your point, Chair, on the engagement with TEO specifically. So for each of us, we'll all be engaging with our home department on our planning for the year ahead, the outcomes that we hope to achieve, and the budget that we'll require to do that. And we also go through the appropriate budgetary processes to ensure that we're clear about delivering value for money for all of our spend, not just for hospitality, which will be a proportion of our budgets. And from a Chinese perspective, or a China perspective for the Bureau, the reason why our hospitality elements are so important is that China is a very relationship-led environment. You'll hear the term in the news often of people-to-people engagement. So that hospitality aspect of engagement with Chinese officials and also with our partner universities and those that we're hoping to actually buy more things from Northern Ireland in terms of supporting our export growth. It's culturally a very important aspect of activity here, and there's a strong expectation of professional reciprocity when we host events versus when we attend events. And in China, it does really, hospitality really demonstrates a seriousness, a respect and long-term intent. And again, you probably hear that coming through in those people-to-people discussions that the PM will have in the news over these next couple of days. So thank you.
Thank you all for putting all that on the record. I want to stay with you, Kerry, and it's really just about the last two appearances. Obviously, I think one of the times you were just in the door, and it's really around the comms. I think you assured us at at your last evidence session that everything you are working on it. There'll be far more visibility of your work, and yet the Executive Office's webpage in relation to the Beijing office still has as its cover the 2017 press statement with Robinson and McGuinness. I mean, so what is happening? Because when I read your report, I thought, gosh, for a small team of 3 people, you are doing a lot of work, but we're just not hearing about it. So what are you going to do about the comms? Thank you, Kerry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and a not unanticipated question, I might add. And certainly sitting here in front of you, I had hoped that we'd be in a much louder communication space than we've currently been able to be. But I would assure you that there's a very strong programme of communications for this year, not just with the China Bureau, but with all of the bureaus. There is significant work going on to refresh the bureau pages on our TEO website, which you rightfully say are very out of date. We're doing this in collaboration with our colleagues in Belfast, and there's the provision of relevant material to update those with the ministers. Formal publication of updates to the web pages, as I'm sure you will appreciate, requires ministerial approval, and they are actively being considered at the moment. But we're also very cognizant of the understandable pressures that have been on our ministers in TEO over the past few months. But it's not just about websites, it's also about our social media content. And one of the big challenges, which I know I've mentioned previously, which I hadn't anticipated when I picked up the role, the difficulties of the bureaucracy around this, is having access to our social media back in the UK, specifically our LinkedIn account as an example. And we've made some great progress in that since we last met. So we think we've actually broken through what was a technical barrier to be able to post on LinkedIn. And it has been a very long and bureaucratic process, for which I apologise, but it has been something that's been out of my hands. But with the great support of my colleagues back in Belfast, we've actually kind of like busted that one. So I will not be as red-faced in front of you again on this matter.
Well, no, thank you, Kerry, and I'm being sincere in that I think that since you've taken a post, there has been such a large amount of work. And I suppose we as a committee will always welcome an update paper from yourself, very similar to the one Aodhán gave us then, I think, at the start of the year. I think it was widely spread, but that sort of communication would be greatly welcomed. I just have one last question for Richard before I hand over, and that's really in terms of the sort of bipartisan relationships. I think you referred to them there, Richard, and I think we are all here in Northern Ireland watching with deep despair at what's happening in Washington, Minnesota and other parts of the ES. And I'm just wondering if you can give some commentary in terms of any difficulties you're facing in terms of keeping the Northern Ireland message alive and keeping people engaged and interested in actually investing and doing some collaborative work with us here. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, Chair, obviously in the space, and we work steadily to build and maintain those relationships. So by going to Capitol Hill and engaging with members of Congress and talking to them about Northern Ireland, there is still the interest there, because people do feel either a sense of curiosity about it, or because of the historic links to the peace process, or because of the 250 connection, which we'll be talking a lot about, our strong connections with that declaration. It's just you have to work a little bit harder to make sure people understand the importance of what we've got on offer here. That interest remains undimmed, and I think as well, particularly outside of DC. So a lot of the headline federal news is coming from DC, though of course it's affecting other places as well, as you mentioned, Minnesota. But we get out as well to engage in Atlanta. We did some very good work with the Department of Justice in Chicago, who are very interested in learning from the lessons from our police service and vice versa. So we continue to find those points of interest, things like technology, artificial intelligence. Everybody's interested in those. So it's about finding the opportunities to tell the Northern Ireland story, and that's what we do, and that's where all those relationships and the engagement that we do to build those relationships comes into the fore. And I think Kerry mentioned ministerial visits, and we will be blessed this year with St Patrick's Week to have a number of ministers coming over as part of our programme, and that's a further opportunity to build those relationships and engage on what makes Northern Ireland matter. So we keep our attention on what makes Northern Ireland special, and then use those relationships to sell that, whilst trying to find those points of interest that work in the United States.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Chair. Thank you,
Hey,
please.
folks, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, or I think in Kerry's case, very late at night. But yes, you're all very welcome. Just maybe to follow on from that issue about social media and websites. I've just been scanning through the three of your places. The China one's difficult to actually find at all. But they're not exactly exciting. They tend to be kind of underwhelming when it comes to how you're presenting Northern Ireland as existing in those three very important places for us. And I appreciate that Northern Ireland Civil Service tends to be dull and grey anyway, but I would have thought, given your role and comparing you with Scotland and Wales, your social media images and pictures, and in case of China, shockingly out of date with some people that I definitely wouldn't want in those photographs. And I think there's a serious issue about the urgent need for that to be refreshed. If you're saying that that's something you can't do at your end, we understand that. But it is a serious question for the Executive Office then to address in terms of how they support you in delivering communications. A couple of questions for each of you. Maybe Aidan, to start off with. Appreciate that your closeness to home in a sense in terms of what you do, and probably people here watch more about what goes on in Europe. We have the Windsor Framework stuff and all of that, and there's a lot of scrutiny in respect of all of that. Can I just ask you just about the issues about young people and freedom of travel, freedom of movement within the EU? There's a method of doing that through the Irish Republic, but the UK government is hopefully moving in that direction with some changes. Just what sort of queries do you get, and how have you been moving that? Because young people from Northern Ireland have been tremendous in terms in the past of their want and desire to move, particularly in European member states. And my second question for you is just about what connections do you have with local government across Northern Ireland?
Go ahead, please.
Yes, just making sure my mic was on there. As far as youth is concerned, obviously our ministers have their lines on this, and it is something that we take a particular interest in during our work. We do engage not only with the Commission on this, but with the UK mission to the EU, who are obviously the negotiators for not only Whitehall, but for all of the devolves in the UK. We also work with the Irish Permanent Representation, and we also have lots of conversations with member states, not only to make sure that our point of view and concerns are understood, but also to try and get as much information as possible so that we can make sure that when our ministers are having meetings on this issue, that they have the latest information to hand. As far as the negotiations themselves are concerned, I had a thought that you might bring this up, and I'm assured that things are moving forward. It would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that the UK mission to the EU is regularly in contact, including yesterday, to ask opinions. But other than being told that it is moving forward and discussions are deep and ongoing, I think that's all I can tell you. On the local government, well, actually through our international relations team in Belfast, we have a local government group which has a lot of, all of our local councils on it. We will meet with them, give them updates about what we're doing as the Three Bureau. We'll also give them an update, our Belfast colleagues will, about visits into Northern Ireland so that they can make the most of it, especially when there are, say, for example, Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon, where I grew up, are particularly pushing their agri-food offer at the moment. So if there are people who are particularly interested in that, then that's where they will go as well. We also facilitate visits by local government here. Should that be for European Week of Regions and Cities here? Should it be for an exploratory meeting for themselves? Should it be for some of the cross-border stuff, such as the East Border region, which takes everywhere from north down, right down into the Midlands in Ireland? So I'm happy to say that we feed through a lot. but more importantly, we provide platforms and opportunities.
Just very, very briefly, just on that business about the United Kingdom representation in Brussels, communicating with you and keeping you up to date with their negotiations with the EU, and just from a personal perspective, it's good to see the UK government every day inching that bit closer back into Europe. But can I say to you, are you genuinely consulted about what are very complex issues that relate to Northern Ireland and our relationship with the EU, or are you just being told? Are you actually asked to contribute meaningfully to those discussions that are happening between the UK government and Brussels?
So we are asked about how things affect, and Brussels, our office here is only one touch point. We obviously have our colleagues in Belfast in the International Relations and the EU strategy team, but we also have the individual departments, and we will facilitate under the structures and substructures of the withdrawal agreement and the Windsor framework. But we'll also be asked if there is something that is particularly of interest to Northern Ireland, to make sure that the right people are in the room. And I think that dual approach of making sure that we have representation here in Brussels, but also have that direct line to departments in Belfast. And while it's not just about the EU-UK relationship, it's also about our relationship with Whitehall, should that be DEFRA, who are constantly in contact, especially on the SPS arrangements, DBT, DESNES. There's never enough information. And I'm a firm believer in that. But things are a lot better than they used to be, and we continue to build those communication lines.
Just very briefly moving on to Kerry, and then I have a quick question for Richard as well. Kerry, you made reference to the fact that you recently had the economy minister in China, and I'm on record as having been critical of that visit, because essentially around China's human rights record and inconsistency in terms of the minister's approach to a whole range of international issues. But notwithstanding that, can you tell us, did she, or was she even able or capable of raising any of those human rights issues with any of the people that she met, regardless of how much the pushback might have been from Chinese officials in respect of those areas? And I want to come on then to the Prime Minister's visit with you shortly.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And as I'm sure you'll appreciate, so even since the last time that we've attended the committee where human rights was discussed, I personally have been raising human rights with the UK government here in China. As you know, devolved governments have responsibility for the implementation of human rights obligations within their own jurisdictions, but where it falls to another country, so the human rights issues is in the field of international relations, which isn't a devolved matter. Yeah. So the mechanism through which officials or ministers can raise the human rights issues outside of Northern Ireland is through the UK government. And I can confirm that when the Minister for the Economy was here, that was the key component of one of her discussions with the Deputy Head of Mission to for the UK to China, and they had a lengthy discussion on that matter, where I can say openly that as it's regularly said, where the Deputy Head of Mission did assure the Minister that human rights issues and concerns are regularly voiced where it's appropriate to do so with Chinese officials. But it wouldn't have been for the minister to do that. She needed to do that through the UK government, because that's the system that we sit within.
Our answer to that question is all we did was go there and talk to ourselves. We certainly didn't push that message out into the Chinese community. The Prime Minister's there at the moment, and many people will be very queasy about the fact that he's even gone to China. But there is, of course, a business dimension to all of this, and he's taken with him some 60 leading UK business people and organisations today. I actually have the list of all of them. Having scanned that list, there's not a single organisation from Northern Ireland represented there. Do you know why Northern Ireland is not represented in the Prime Minister's list of people that have gone to China with him today?
I do, Deputy Chair. So for each of the devolved areas, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there were a selection of invitations sent to key businesses and cultural organisations. And for Northern Ireland, those invitations weren't taken up. So the invitations were extended, and they were initial invitations had been turned down. They were pushed to offered to other businesses who also didn't accept the opportunity. So it wasn't with for any disrespect to us in Northern Ireland. The invitations were put out, and I have to, I think we have to understand that there's the late, I suppose, timing on all of this gave businesses and cultural organisations very little time to plan for a visit. So I think they probably only would have received, and this for all of the businesses that attended, about a week's notice. So there was the timeliness of it, but also the expense of travelling out to the other side of the world. So the invitations were sent in sincerity, but unfortunately, you're absolutely right. We don't have Northern Ireland businesses attending in person. I would, however, say that both myself at the Bureau and our Invest NI director out here in China have identified other ways in which we can promote our Northern Ireland businesses to the audiences that will be in front of the Prime Minister over these coming days. So we have some of our whiskies, Bushmills and McConnell's, being very actively promoted at the Prime Minister's reception tomorrow evening. And we also have, through the efforts of Invest NI, I think 4 of our products being promoted at the House of the UK event in Shanghai. And so a lot, and that's across our food and pottery, I believe, being promoted. So we've done what we can on the ground to represent businesses who weren't able to travel at that short notice.
And I appreciate the cost to businesses in travelling to these types of events and the difficulties, particularly with short notice. But it hasn't been short notice to you. You and the Bureau will have been aware that the Prime Minister was coming. You may not have appreciated the date, but officials will have in London. What engagement will you be having? Will you physically be at any of the events that the UK Prime Minister is participating in over the next couple of days?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll be representing the Bureau at the Prime Minister's reception tomorrow, which is the welcome reception to Beijing, where we'll have all of the business and cultural delegates and key stakeholders from the UK Embassy attending the Ambassador's residence tomorrow evening. And I will also, alongside Invest NI, be representing Northern Ireland at the UK Business Forum on Friday morning. And that will be an opportunity for both myself and Invest NI to promote Northern Ireland and Northern Ireland's interests in the discussions that we have there. Further to that, we've also been given the opportunity to extend an invite to that forum to Northern Ireland's key stakeholders in China. So it isn't just myself and the Invest NI. We've also been able to invite our key sister city and provincial stakeholders to that on behalf of Northern Ireland to the business forum in China. So it has actually been very helpful to us in extending and developing those key stakeholder relationships for ourselves. So hopefully we'll have a good few days discussions.
Right, I'm going to move on, Stuart. I'll maybe bring you in if we have time at the end, because there's more to come back. Timothy, please.
Thanks very much. Afternoon. I suppose starting with Brussels and starting with you, Aodhán. Does the Brussels office have seats in any of the specialised committees between the EU and UK? If so, what specialised committees, so I can understand your role?
So there's, we are invited, there's only one specialised committee, there's specialised committee subgroups underneath those. And we do sit on some of the Windsor Framework governance structures. The specialised committee officials are asked to appear as part of the UK delegation. The UK is the interlocutors for Northern Ireland in this process, and we will be asked to make some opening remarks. There are other sub groups as part of they're structured groups as part of the specialised committee. One on SPS, for example. There is one on state aid, one on non-food goods, and not only ourselves and TEO, but home departments will be represented on those, even the Food Standards Agency when it comes to the food and drink SPS.
Your office does more than simply observe and report on EU developments. That would be fair to say. It makes representations to EU institutions as well.
Well, that is part of the role. We represent our minister's views. We represent it is the office of the Northern Ireland Executive, not just of the Executive Office. So where there are ministerial lines, then that is exactly what we use. If there are concerns that want to be brought forward, but we do not, we work at the service of our ministers and at the direction of our ministers, and that's where the line is.
Yeah, so what representations have you made about AI and Cyber Resilience Acts?
So we will be talking regularly on those particular areas. There is the
possession
joint...
have you taken on them?
Sorry?
What possession has the office taken on them?
Well, we don't have a position ourselves. Our office doesn't have a position. It's if ministers have a position, then we will take that. If they don't have a position on something, then we will be there as far as reporting what is moving forward or what the EU functions are. I have to be very clear. We act at the direction of our ministers. If they have lines, then we can use those lines. Outside of that, we do not have a remit to push anything.
So you would only act and argue for Northern Ireland to be subject to these acts if you get a clear direction from the First Minister and Deputy First Minister?
Like I said, I don't think I can answer it any other way other than we work under the direction of our ministers.
Your ministers are?
Our ministers are the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister.
Yeah, so you would only argue for Northern Ireland to be subject to the acts if you get a clear direction from the Joint Office, from the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister?
We do not argue for us to be subject to acts. That is not what our job is. Our job is to make representation as we are allowed and directed about impacts on Northern Ireland. The EU legislation is the EU legislation, and we're very clear that officials from Northern Ireland do not legislate at EU level. We do not change the laws in that way. However, what we do through our membership of these groups and through our relationships is to provide an understanding of the potential challenges at an early stage, so that we can help mitigate the impact by informing the UK government and others. We feed Northern Ireland specific data, Northern Ireland specific evidence and operational insight into the discussions with the Commission, Member States, other stakeholders throughout that process. It's not our job to push for or against anything. It's our job to provide Northern Ireland specific evidence and data.
So, moving more to a very live issue in the developments from today regarding the EU vehicle type approval regulations, that was Regulation 2025-14. Did you make any representations, or was there representations made that should be added to the Windsor framework? And what do you make of the government bypassing this applicability motion procedure and the Assembly by introducing that today?
Well, me taking a position on what the government has done is in the sphere of politics, and as well as I did, that it's something that I cannot be drawn on. Unfortunately, I haven't seen what went through today. I'm more than happy to follow up with you, but I spent all day trying to get ready for this committee, and that wasn't something that I concentrated on. I was the brief for today was the work and the wider work of the office. So you'll have to apologise. I'll have to apologise to you, but I will get back to you.
Yeah, no, So that's clear that essentially it's news to you. That hasn't been something that's been discussed or worked on within the Brussels.
No, that's not what I said. But I don't want to give you, I believe the phrase is a bum steer on this. I don't want to provide you with evidence or with data that is not correct. And just as I check it for everyone else, I will certainly check and find out. We have had representations, we have had meetings, but the depth of those and what has actually happened, we have a staff here, and we have a staff in Belfast and departmental officials that I will need to check and see exactly what has done. But rest assured, I will provide you with an answer.
Yeah, if I could move on to Kerry there, Beijing. So I was interested that you picked up on and mentioned that international relations aren't a devolved matter. But reading over your paper, it says the Chinese Bureau has a diplomatic and a representative office. So when I look at diplomatic, what that means to me is it has management of international relations. You pointed out that they're exempt under the 1998 agreement. So why would you describe yourself in such a way?
So I suppose that we are a diplomatic office in the sense that under the Vienna Convention, in order for Northern Ireland to have a presence in China, we are doing so under the UK government ability to have an embassy here. So I'm here under the UK mission to China, representing Northern Ireland's interests. However, human rights remains a reserve matter. So when Northern Ireland wishes to make representation on human rights matters, it is the legal process for us to do that through the UK government representatives here in Beijing.
Yeah. So did the TEO ever approve that you would describe yourself as diplomatic? And do you have...
I think the very nature... Oh, sorry, apologies.
And on that basis of what you said, do you then, because you're sitting under the UK, do you report to them as well?
So firstly, on the diplomatic, it's the UK government that describes us as a diplomatic representative. That's the nature of us being here under the Vienna Convention through UK government. So it's a UK government description. And apologies, what was the second part of your question?
Well, it was really to tease out on what basis are you going and using the term diplomatic when there's no international standing for it within Northern Ireland, but you're saying that the UK has set that title, and it's them that has provided you essentially on that to use the term, to have international standing, or that's what it appears under the name that you have used. It's the UK government that set that.
So just to clarify, so in order to be to represent Northern Ireland in China, we do that through the UK government mission and its ability under the Vienna Convention. We don't do it independently of UK government, hence the UK government describes us as a diplomatic posting. And a lot of it is to do with the protections of UK staff, including those in Northern Ireland, to actually operate safely and securely in China. So it enables me to have a diplomatic ID card and for my family to have those when they're out in China. So it's just part of how all of the partners across government are described through the UK mission. So it's a procedural process, but it doesn't alter the nature of areas that I can discuss and push on. So in relation to human rights, that remains a reserve matter. So my mechanism to engage on that and that of our ministers or officials who travel out to China is still through that international relations portfolio at the UK government. That's just the rules.
So do you meet the Chinese state or parties linked to the Chinese state?
So we do at times. So when I say parties, we meet with ministries.
Can you name them?
We've met with the minister.
Can you give us a flavour of who you're meeting?
Oh, absolutely. So not independently. So when the Minister for the Economy visited us here last month, we met with the Ministry of Commerce. and also with the Ministry of Education. Part of our ability to do that meant that we had to take along a FCDO representative due to the nature of international relations not being devolved. So we had a UK government representative in the room on each occasion.
So when the economy minister isn't out in China, are you having meetings with those parties on your own when the minister isn't there? Or is it only
so I don't meet. That's a good question. So when there will be occasions where I'll be in the room with UK government representatives who are hosting those meetings, but I don't independently set up those meetings, no. At a central government level. We will, of course, meet with our municipal, so our sister city relationships at a local city level, but that's just part of ongoing local government relations, which is it isn't considered to be diplomatic in that context, hence we're able to do so.
So the UK's position in China is that it poses a systematic threat, including espionage and interference. What way does that affect your work when you're out in China?
But you're absolutely right. That's part of the analysis of the security services in the UK. But the UK Foreign Office policy on engaging with China is that they're seeking a stable long-term relationship with China where they're able to challenge on issues with which they don't agree, so such as the human rights issues, and they do, but also to collaborate with them in areas where it is good for long-term economic growth, and also to compete with them where there's the opportunity for UK-wide organisations, universities or industries to actually come above the Chinese organisations in those spaces. So it's often talked about in terms of the 3 Cs, is the overall Foreign Office policy, so where we can challenge, collaborate and cooperate.
Yeah, last week I was able to attend an event in Stormont by Open Doors. They hosted it and it produced the World Watch List 2026 for the top 50 countries where Christians are persecuted. Do you know where China sits in that list? Are you aware of that at all?
I haven't seen the report, no.
China sits number 17 on that list. So I raised this with you the last time, and it's something that certainly concerns me. When you go to any of your meetings, is there any talk of restricting what you can say in the China human rights violations and the concerns and the persecution of Christians that we have back home?
So if I'm meeting with a Chinese government official and I'm the UK representative in the room, that's not an area that I'm technically able to discuss that. And I would also say that it's not actually the types of meetings that we have wouldn't be with individuals who would fall into that space. So we really give a lot of consideration to human rights at the Northern Ireland Bureau out here. So it's actually pretty integral to how we operate. So I would say that it's unlikely that we'd be holding a meeting or engaging with people where that was part of the concern. And if it is, when we're actually arranging a meeting, those meetings wouldn't go ahead. So we don't pursue meetings with individuals to progress engagement where human rights is an outstanding concern.
Okay, thanks.
Could I just ask one regarding...
Very small.
Richard, just yourself, and I wanted to raise with you when you were on today about Cantor Fitzgerald and the revelations that have come regarding the 300 jobs they pulled because of concerns of Sinn Féin, their geopolitical stance being anti-Israel and anti-Trump. What are you aware? Did you have any discussions with the company, and were you aware that they had pulled 300 jobs because of them concerns that were held by the minister?
Let him answer because I need to move on soon. Go ahead, please.
I wasn't involved in that. It hasn't been raised with me here. It's a commercial decision, so I wasn't involved in it, and I don't know the background to it.
Okay, I think we'll move on. Pam, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your attendance at committee today. I want to thank you from the outset for the work that you're doing in all these different parts of the world. I think it is very important that Northern Ireland is able to make their tiny mark on that huge map. And I know that you all do very important work. I have had the pleasure in my previous role of going out to Brussels to visit Aodhán and to avail of his spectacular hospitality, I think he said himself. I know there's an awful lot of good work that is going on out there. I just have a couple of questions, one for Kerry, one for Aodhán, and maybe ask Kerry a question first, given that, I mean, you can see the theme already today. I mean, no matter where you are and whoever you're talking to, when you say China, pretty much the next three words are coming or human rights abuses. So it is something that clearly everybody is very concerned about and very worried about. But I just wanted to ask you if you wanted to give a view as to how the Bureau in China ensures a balance between promoting inward investment whilst also recognising those huge concerns around the extensive ethical and human rights abuse concerns in respect of the Chinese government.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity, because it is an important issue, and it's right that we do talk about it here. So, and I think that the lessons that we have at the Bureau follow the lessons that many other missions in China from countries across the world have also been challenged with over these past years. And the position that the UK government has came to around challenge where we need to, and where policies aren't in line with UK policies, for example, on human rights, I think it is a fair one, and it's one that I've seen evidence that they do that quite well, that challenge function. But part of the ability to be able to have that challenge function is to actually have that stable relationship where you can have those conversations. And again, I think the UK government is developing that very well through, firstly, the Prime Minister's visit, and previous to that, the Foreign Minister's visit and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, all of whom have been out in the past 12 months. So they have developed that very, very well in terms of having a good relationship so that you can have difficult conversations. And I think that's quite similar to the role that we take. Obviously, it isn't a devolved matter for us. So I'm able to have those conversations through the networks that I have, through the China Board of Management, through the weekly meetings that I have with the Deputy Head of Mission, where these are challenges that come up. We're able to discuss them openly and candidly because we have a presence here and make sure that Northern Ireland's voice is heard, and that really helps. But then second, the other aspect of it is making decisions on what it is that we do in China. We do not pursue opportunities where there is that human rights challenge. So we're working with sister cities in areas of collaborations with schools and universities and furthering education and growing our economy. We're not working with cities or regions where the UK government, for example, have identified that there's specific challenges. We don't do that. So there's that balance of just being able to be a good friend and a good voice inside the networks that we're able to, which is primarily the UK mission, but also ensuring that the relationships that we have are focused on positive outcomes for everybody rather than areas where there's challenge.
Okay, thank you. It's very helpful. Aodhán, if I could just come to you next, and I'd remiss me to say congratulations on your new daddy status. Yeah. Very pleased for you, but not envious.
I tell you what, it's a hell of a lot harder at 49 than it was at 29.
I'm very sure. Aodhán, I just wanted to ask you whether you agreed that irrespective, and I know the vast amount of work that goes on, you and your team out there in Brussels in particular, but irrespective of that level of engagement that the NI Executive Office in Brussels has with EU agencies, this I mean, it can't, so I'm asking for your agreement on this, it cannot overcome the vast democratic deficit created by the protocol. That's my first question to you. And then I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us about how the office's role has changed and has had to change since Brexit.
Okay. Firstly, while I look forward to possibly having the new junior minister with me at the Ulster Fry this year, on a personal note, you will very much be missed. On the democratic deficit, while you can ask me to agree, I certainly could not comment on a political statement. What I can say is one of the, and perhaps the most important thing that we do in our office is to make sure that Northern Ireland is represented, that the concerns of Northern Ireland, that the opportunities of Northern Ireland, and actually what we do well and the innovation that Northern Ireland does is underpins everything that we do. How that has changed substantially is that we have a role of making sure, as the only part of the UK that continues to have EU law in place, that we are able to engage early on anything that we hear, even if it's not even a proposal. You know, there's an old saying here in Brussels that if it's written down, it's too late. But even if it's before it gets to Parliament, before it gets written down, again, it goes back to the hospitality. It's about the face-to-face, eye-to-eye conversations that we have, and it's the three of us do it. Most recently, globally, we have able to work together and provide our ministers, even this past 2 weeks, on tariffs. What would things mean in Northern Ireland from what the US was doing? What would the knock-on for China be? And what would the EU's response be? And how would that affect our businesses? We've also had to widen not only our monitoring, but our engagement with departments. That's one, so they're able to service their own committees. They're able to service the Democratic Scrutiny Committee, which is, as we know, a new advent since the Windsor framework. Our work has grown exponentially, and part of that is the need for us to be across everything that may or may not affect Northern Ireland. And we have to be clear, it's not just about the direct stuff, it's about the indirect stuff that could affect our supply chains, who we work with. We have also had to look at how we engage on individual issues. Now, the last time I was in front of the committee, I was able to talk about the results we'd had on tariff rate quotas and on dental amalgam. We're continuing to get results. One of the things you will have heard of over this past few weeks is the fact that the physical checks from GBTNI have moved from 10% to 8%. Now, we have been able to support DAERA and the good work that they've been doing, and our retailers and their suppliers, by engaging with member states and the Commission to show that we are taking our responsibilities seriously, that the effect on Northern Ireland, if it did go down from 10% to 8%, the show of goodwill and good faith that it shows as well, and also what it would mean then towards the movement towards 5%. We did a lot of work since actually just before we were in front of the committee in May, and that happened before Christmas. So we are continuing to get results, but for every big ticket result, there's about 30 or 40 things that we're able to provide information, that we're able to provide clarity, that we're able to go, whoa, hold on here, folks, have you thought about? And being here, speaking to member states, building coalitions of other people who are affected by this, and working closely with our Whitehall colleagues in Whitehall, but also the Irish Perm Rep and the UK mission to the EU, means that our work is mushroomed, but we're able, because of those contacts and because of where we are, to make tangible differences for people, business and community across Northern Ireland.
Okay, thank you for that, Aodhán. I suppose just maybe just give Richard a chance to say something. I don't know whether the rest of you want to comment either. You clearly have very small teams. How does that work in a day-to-day sense, and is that sufficient?
Well, all civil servants will always ask for more resources, but it is we're very mindful of the challenging climate everywhere. We work hard to deliver. We have a team of 4 here in DC covering the US and Canada. I'm immensely proud of the work we do to deliver across the range of stakeholders we work with. A key part of that is partnerships. The partnerships we deliver here, working with universities and others, but also the partnership at home with Aodhán's referred to our colleagues in Belfast in the international relations team, and certainly for a big event like St. Patrick's, we'll be working flexibly to deploy resources to make sure that we can use staff from there as well. You could always do more. You could always do more, but at the moment, I think we're focusing on rebuilding those networks, strengthening the social media connections, expanding the message out there, and delivering certainly the biggest events this year, St. Patrick's and 250. I think we'll be able to do it. But it's very exciting, and we do appreciate the resources that we do have from home to deliver those big events.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Sinead, please. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for your answers so far, and thank you for the work that you do on behalf of Northern Ireland in all of the areas that you work in, from America and Canada, China, and of course Brussels. I suppose the international outlook now, it's just the old world order has gone, and as Mark Kearney said last week in Davos, it's not coming back. And you can see how that tilts your strategic way of working as well, because you're in a completely different geopolitical context. Can I ask, based on that, the old world order of kind of international rules and engagement that has been blown up by Donald Trump, how has that impacted, the work in China, the work in America, and the work in Brussels? Because obviously each of the bureaus, there is a lot of activity underway, but there has to be a strategic direction given to you by the executive here, and how you deal with those templates and changing world views of what's happening. We can see, like India, a big trade agreement with the EU. We can see that international leaders are going to China talking about the economy. Keir Starmer, as you've said, is there today. Things are changing, and the dominance maybe of some Western regions is not there, or the respect is not there. So how do you deal with that in each of your areas?
I suppose if I start as far as Northern Ireland, as far as Brussels is concerned, on a personal note, there's been more change in trade in this past 12 months than there has been in the 25 years that I've been engaged in it. Yeah. The current administration in the US is not particularly fond of multinationalism and multilateral treaties. And things have changed, and as the old saying goes, strange times make strange bedfellows, and we're seeing the different coalitions now that would not have happened 5-10 years ago. Yeah. I suppose where the strength of what we do comes into play is because we are based where we are based, and the EU and the effect that has if they make reciprocal tariffs against the US or against anybody else, the knock-on from China, and the particular concern, for example, that the EU has on Chinese dumping, and what the anti-dumping measures would mean for Northern Ireland, and of course in America, where things are, the disruption, shall we say, has started. I think the fact that we are a global presence, that we are in 3 areas that really make the most difference economically, means that we have an ability to provide information to our ministers in a way that otherwise would not be possible. There have been times, this time last year, about this time last year, whenever the tariff stuff started, there were 2 a.m. Emails going between Kerry, myself, Richard, and the Belfast team to make sure that the update for 7 a.m. for our ministers on exactly what's happened on tariffs was there.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, I think, make sure that we are a constant voice. So it's not just about the information. It's about reminding people about Northern Ireland, about telling the good story of innovative, collaborative partnerships area that we are, and making sure that no matter where the flex or the pressure points are, that we have the relationships and the networks in place to get the information we need, but also to exert soft diplomacy and influence, and also make sure basically we're not forgotten about. But I know, Kerry, this is something that you'd looked at.
But thank you, Aodhán, and with the geopolitics, it's not just I think for many of us following along, it's certainly more interesting times than we've previously lived in. But I would actually say that from the perspective of being out in China and working with our key stakeholders, both on the ground in China and also back at home across whether it's education, tourism sector, our local authorities, our business representative groups and departments. What's actually changed for us in terms of opportunity in China, which is what we're thinking about, is the Chinese policy itself. So we're at the start of a new 5-year plan for China. When we look at what China's plans are in the world, what its plans are, and specifically what I mean by that is its GDP growth plans. They understand, because of political pressure outside of China on Chinese trade imbalances, that they need to increase their own consumption, and there's only so much that they can produce for the market. So what we're actually seeing as China tries to increase consumer consumption within, currently I think they state it as 400 million middle class people with a lot of savings that they want to spend more because they're not investing it into the property market. They want more imports from outside of China. And so when we're having engagements, and certainly when the Minister for the Economy was here, that was a consistent message that she was receiving. We want to buy more things from outside of China. Mm-hmm. So that's certainly something the whole of the UK is looking to capitalise on, not just in terms of goods and services exports, or specifically goods exports, but also in terms of education and tourism as a service. But at the moment, I think the UK's overall exports to China are worth 30.8 billion a year. And how the UK is framing this is that there's the opportunity for 1 billion increased exports to China per annum. And we may see some opportunities arising specifically from the PM's visit. But for us back in the Northern Ireland Bureau with our NI hats on and Invest NI and Tourism Ireland, we still have the same plans to a great extent because we have our same capabilities. So what is it that we have in Northern Ireland where we excel, where we innovate? What is our capacity for our businesses to export those goods or services? And where is the market opportunity in China? And while there's been a lot of noise in terms of the geopolitical space, those fundamentals for us haven't shifted hugely because we only have a certain capability, capacity, and opportunity. So, and while the opportunity is the area that's growing, there is that need to increase our capability and capacity back home to take advantage of that opportunity. And so while big things have changed, many things have remained the same.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And Richard?
Yes, I'd like to just echo what Kerry said about those fundamentals, because the US remains our second largest export market. I mean, that's 1.7 billion. Canada is not far behind, it's our third largest. So it's those economic relationships with tourism. So we've got a high number, 190,000 of US tourists visit Northern Ireland, 51,000 Canadian tourists as well. So tourism remains a big one for us, working jointly with Invest NI and Tourism Ireland. The universities are a really strong sector. Queen's and Ulster punch way above their weight in terms of not just attracting students, and we support them with doing that, but also in terms of research partnerships with the great university sectors here. Where I think there's maybe been a little bit of a shift is probably around, and I think this is partly to do with Northern Ireland's trajectory anyway, because the Northern Ireland, the peace process, which put us on the map in Washington, D.C., is more historical now than it was. And that's opened up opportunities for us to focus on state relationships. So I was in Atlanta, building those relationships, huge economic parts of the US where you can form connections for people at home, which we may not have looked at before. LA is another one, because screen is such an important part of our industry in gaming, with Studio Ulster, building those relationships there. So more engagement at state level. And then, say, working with Invest NI, taking account of the sort of America First model, looking to see where Northern Irish businesses can set up here in the US if they want to, supporting and enabling that as well, making sure people understand the market and the opportunities at home that exist here. So it's no longer just about attracting large amounts of US investment into Northern Ireland. It's about balancing that out as well, and that's good for everybody. So fundamentals remain the same, but there are things that we can do around that to build stronger relationships.
Yeah.
Just, I suppose the earlier conversations were about, I suppose maybe value for money, for want of a better expression. But I do believe that if we want an international presence, if Northern Ireland wants an international presence, then you have to pay for it. And I know we can't afford to pay big bucks, but we have to pay for it and understand that, and a budget is required for that, and I support that, because I do think there is a lot in it about building relationships and making connections. But the really important part for all of you is how you communicate that value for money and be able to identify what your presence has meant and what doors that you were able to open, and how maybe you could demonstrate that success. Now, that success may not always be a monetary success. It could be a relationship, with Ulster University, or that then goes on to develop not essentially you making the money, but an organisation or a company from Northern Ireland being able to make that connection because of you. So and I suppose it's the value for money, but communications is a key component of that. And honestly, at this particular point in time, it only invites controversy if you don't actually have the proper communication that demonstrates success and value. Not that, from your papers, we see your activity, we know your activity, and you're going into a critical time here, because your resources will be all fixated on St. Patrick's Day and those relationships and those door opening exercises. But I really do think, and it's critical, that we see a communications plan and a really joint effort. And that's probably when I was talking about international relationships and the change in things. We have to see that all of the office are working jointly under key strategic themes, and it is having an impact. So I would say probably the next time that we come together, if there was a way of being able to demonstrate that joint working and the joint outcomes, would be much more beneficial to us as members and to our constituents, that they know that it is value for money. So it's not a question, it's just a statement of observation from sitting around listening to all of the conversations today. Thank you.
I think we'll move on. Okay, Philip, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and colleagues. Thank you very much for your presentations, and can I thank you for the work that you have done and will continue to do. I'm a huge champion of promoting Northern Ireland across the world, and the role that you play in this is vital. Obviously, that's under the context of you act under the direction and control of ministers on devolved issues, and ultimately on reserved matters, you make your representations through the proper channels, which is the sovereign UK government. Richard, if I could start with you, sir, can I congratulate you again on your post? You've brought much needed professionalism and stability back to the Northern Ireland Bureau in Washington. You opened your remarks, Richard, by saying that you have had ministers confirmed coming for St Patrick's Day and America 250. Could you just outline to the committee which ministers have confirmed that they're attending Washington this year?
We have the Communities Minister has confirmed. We are discussing with other ministers, including the Education Minister and the our own ministers as well. And the Speaker of the Assembly, I think, is considering a visit as well. So we offer support and advice on what those visits could look like.
So has there been no confirmation from the Executive Office yet?
Well, because we haven't got we haven't had formal invitations for the main events, so we're waiting to see what the schedule. So the Speaker's lunch hasn't been confirmed yet. The White House reception, those things. Some of that global instability we're referring to earlier applies as well. So there aren't actually invitations for them to respond to yet.
But so have you issued invitations to the Northern Ireland Bureau event?
We haven't issued those yet. We're in the process of planning that event, but those haven't issued yet.
Okay. Do you expect the Economy Minister to be in Washington?
We're aware that she's making her plans at the minute. I think there's talk for West Coast visit that's under consideration, but we're not clear yet whether she'll be coming to DC.
And Richard,
the issue is always, Philip, just getting the invitations and the clarity so people know what they can commit to and how long they're going to have to set aside in their diaries to come. So until we get that clarity, it's just not possible to pin down all the events. The 250 is the exception, because the Communities Minister is planning to co-host an event with the 250 Commission, and therefore he has more control over that.
And when other ministers visit the United States, does the Bureau attend those meetings?
So, subject to resources, we do. When we had the Communities Minister out in October, I think I attended all his engagements, or most of them. But as I said, we're a small team, so it's not always possible to spread ourselves so thinly. And I should have mentioned the Health Minister is also considering a visit as well. So we're looking, again, offering advice at this stage, and keen to, in terms of what I said earlier about broadening out beyond DC, we're offering advice and engagement with ministers on other places that they can go to build up those relationships. Nashville's particularly strong on medtech and health innovation, so we're talking to our Health Minister about that. And also for the Communities Minister, we're looking at something in Atlanta as well, following up from the relationships we had there. So if we're doing that kind of geographical spread, we can't always attend those visits, but we provide support and advice to make sure they run smoothly.
And was there anyone from the Northern Ireland Bureau in DC at the meeting with the Minister for the Economy on the 11th of March 2025, when the Minister met with Cantor Fitzgerald when 300 jobs were lost in Northern Ireland?
We weren't at that meeting.
No. Did you provide advice for that meeting?
No.
Why not, when you said that you would provide advice? Or
well, because Invest NI, again, we small teams, we work very, very close partnership with our colleagues. That was an Invest NI driven engagement, I'm assuming. So they would provide the advice. No
problem. I appreciate that, Richard. Thank you. Aidan Palm stole my line of congratulations, so I'll just add them in. Congratulations to you, and thank you for the work that you're doing out there. And I just wanted to check in relation to the economy again. So you're in a unique position in that, thankfully, Northern Ireland's services sector here isn't covered by the auspices of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which gives an advantage to Northern Ireland in that if there are EU countries or firms who are looking at access to the UK market in relation to services but continue to trade with their European neighbours, that Northern Ireland is a prime place for investment. Is that a piece of work that that you guys are able to do, being able to promote the services sector here in Northern Ireland, given its unfettered access to the UK services sector?
So, to put our raison d'etre very bluntly, if it's Northern Ireland and if it's worth selling, we'll sell it. Okay. And that's kind of how we look at things. One of the biggest problems that we've had is a lot of people don't know Northern Ireland. There are 300 plus representations here in Brussels, and it is a very crowded marketplace. Again, that's why we have these events, etc. Yeah. but we have carved a really good niche for ourselves, and that niche has changed. And I have to say, pay tribute to the work of Richard and Kerry for, it's kind of a pincher movement globally, where we're able to prove that Northern Ireland isn't the past, and Northern Ireland isn't 25 years. Northern Ireland is an innovative, collaborative partner who does really, really well. Like we look at areas, for example, within the public sector, where we regularly have the Department of Justice out, and we had an event here before Christmas where we had some of the biggest practitioners in justice in this office to talk about trafficking. And we had people turn up not just to discuss, but to listen about what Northern Ireland was doing. On the economic side, we have Invest NI based in our offices here. We work very, very closely with them. Ongoing, they support us with events. We have regular engagement with our economy liaison officer, making sure there's constant exchange of policy, commercial insights. We have provided Invest with commercial leads, and it's not just about goods, it's about services as well. They've been able to feed that into their new business pipeline, and where they've not been clients of Invest, they now are, and are in touch with the relative relevant Invest NI stakeholders. We are also not just looking at countries when it comes to services. We provided links with Flemish Trade and Investment Agency, and this year we had a notable engagement when we got both ourselves and Invest NI invited to a presentation in a stand on the blue economy. And again, a lot of that is services. It opened the door to meet several important stakeholders. We look at the economy as a whole.
Yeah. There
are different priorities that will be set by our ministers, but when there is an opportunity, we don't, as my dad would say, we don't throw and miss the wall.
Very good. Thank you, Aodhán. Kerry, thank you for your work, and can I thank you for continuing to raise the human rights abuses and issues with the UK government out there in China. I think it's important that Northern Ireland plays its role in highlighting those. I just wanted to check focus on the tourism, inward tourism from China to Northern Ireland piece, and the screen industry piece, which you had spoken about in terms of the Economy Minister's recent visit. Could you maybe just give some details of that and any trends that you have in relation to Chinese visitors into Northern Ireland?
Thank you very much. And yes, right, the tourism and screen industry are two of my favourite topics, so thank you. So if I start on the tourism side, so we often think that we might not have that many Chinese tourists coming to Northern Ireland. It's a very long way to go, but actually Tourism Ireland have been doing a wonderful job selling Northern Ireland out in China through high value tour groups. That's what they're focused on. And the minister, for the economy, when she was visiting us in December, went to a Tourism Ireland event alongside the chair of Tourism Ireland, who travelled out for that event also to promote Northern Ireland to those tour operators who are essentially taking the elite of China to places that are slightly unique and let's face it, Instagrammable across the world. And in fact, tourism and screen industries are actually intrinsically linked in this aspect, because we find in the Chinese market is that there's a new sort of like trend. I'm trying to think of this. I think it's like a set jetting is the phrase. Yes, that's it. So not jet setting, set jetting, where there's a lot of interest in China to visit famous sets from movies around the world. Okay. So Tourism Ireland has been doing a wonderful job in actually promoting Northern Ireland's film set industry, and also the new facilities at the NI Screen and Studio Ulster, and the work that we do together in those spaces. And there might actually be some new products being developed as a result of that big interest at the moment. At the moment, it is bringing in about £20 million a year from China to Northern Ireland, which is not a small amount, but it's an amount that's got huge potential to grow for the whole of the UK. I believe the Chinese tourism is worth about 475 million. I think it's 2024 figures. So huge potential for us to grow that 20 million further, and no better people to do it with than Tourism Ireland, who are doing a great job on the ground. Now, on the just stepping over that link to the screen industry and screen tourism, which, as I say, is huge. Yeah. Game of Thrones is probably an awful lot to do with that. And the screen industry itself and the opportunities to sell our screen industry as a service into China is something that's really growing, and we've had some exciting developments on that in recent months. So I actually spoke at an event at the Jackie Chan Film School, and my colleagues Aodhán and Richard will be sick of me telling them this story. But at that, I had the opportunity to sell the collaboration between our government, our education system, and our industry in promoting the development of the Northern Ireland film industry. And we've got some wonderful examples of that going on, and Studio Ulster being just the prime example at the moment in terms of it being one of the top production facilities in the whole of the world, which is a great accolade for us to be able to push out and market here in China. That
And in
for
North
such
Belfast.
a small place. Yeah. So for such a small place, we are literally world leading. It's not something that we've put on as a tagline somewhere. We can evidence this. This is the best in the world. It's very exciting. And what it's actually done is through the likes of engagements that the Bureau has had at film school events in Hubei, and also the Northern Ireland Film Industry event that we hosted here alongside Ulster University, representing the Studio Ulster developments in Beijing at the ambassador's residence, with 60 guests from the film industry wanting to know more about how do they engage with the film industry in NI. And we had Professor Frank Lyons out with us, who did a wonderful job in selling how amazing Studio Ulster was. He's the SRO at UU for Studio Ulster. And I believe before an hour had passed at this event, and he'd ran out of his Chinese bilingual business cards. So such was the extent of interest and engagement, and that's been ongoing since. So we've been in contact since that film industry event in December. And I think that's maybe going to be one of the areas where we are really going to see a shift in terms of MI selling into China in that industry, which is great because we put the investment in, the opportunity and market is here. We have the capability, the capacity. This all matches up. So it's
Thank
very
you for that,
exciting
Kerry.
time.
That is great. And just before I do my final question to Richard, Kerry, if I could ask you to get a photo of the Prime Minister with some McConnell's whiskey tonight, which is brewed again in North Belfast. Richard.
I shall try my best.
Richard, in terms of the tech conference that you talked about that you're organising, could you just outline that?
Yeah, again, it's still the planning stages, okay, Philip. But there's such huge interest here in cyber. DC's surrounded by lots of cyber industry and federal government work as well, and in artificial intelligence. And again, as Kerry said, it's another one of our great assets. The stuff that the work of David Crozier and co. and universities are doing this is a really strong suit for us. So we're looking at a partnership based on the big data model who've run a series of conferences. They ran one in New York last year and have done others. So in partnership with them and other partners, probably around kind of June time, we'll get St. Patrick's and the main 250 event out of the way. But that's what we'll be looking to sometime around kind of June period.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
And again, we're looking at a partnership model to highlighting something that Northern Ireland does really well, which challenges, as Aidan referred to, that some of those older stereotypes about what people might have in their minds about what Northern Ireland stands for.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go to our final member. Anya, please, if you want to go ahead.
Chair. And look, folks, I'm not going to bore you with a large preamble. And again, look, thanks for joining us. I know it's been a few months since we last had you in. And again, I'd like to thank you for all of the work that you're doing in all of your respective areas, obviously in different political circumstances and environments as well, which can be difficult, obviously, given the political climate that we're all in. So, Aidan, I just want to quickly start with you. And I know that it was previously mentioned, I can't remember who mentioned it, Stuart maybe, just around the Department of Agriculture's remit and input in Brussels. Now, DERA have 2 staff members over there at the minute, and before I continue, I'm going to declare an interest, as I said, on the DERA committee as well, Chair. In relation to DERA's 2 staff members, and then obviously the recent Windsor Framework report, where a recommendation had come out that additional civil service staff should be seconded to Brussels in relation to DERA. Could you maybe, I suppose, break down what input DERA actually has over there between DEFRA and obviously between yourselves as well, Aodhán?
So we work very closely with the departments, and DERA and DOJ and DFE probably are the ones that we work closest with. We had always one person from DERA here. That has been now upgraded to 2. They work on a lot of things, the SPS, some of the environmental stuff, but we have very strongly delineated areas for the DERA staff to work on, and then our own TEO policy staff complement that. But they very much sit as part of the executive office, or the Office of the Northern Ireland Executive family. They are part of our policy team. We make sure that if there's anything that we hear, that it's passed on to them, and vice versa. Absolutely delighted that we have 2 now. It shows the commitment that both the PermSec and the Minister have to making things smoother, more understood, get more information. And to be honest, that's where the real value here has been. We've always looked at trying to get the most information possible. Information is currency. Information is the most important thing when it comes to both our departments and our ministers for making those informed decisions. So having 2 people from DERA here means they're knocking more doors, they're having more meetings, they're attending more events, and they're able to provide that information, and also make representation of what their constituents, as far as the farming community, the environmental community, are telling them. The recent Murphy report did outline, as did the House of Lords report, that the vast majority of people who give evidence to those 2 reports said that the office here does a great job, something of which we're very thankful for that recognition, but that they would like to see more. And again, I will use the line that Richard used earlier, that we have to be aware of the public purse, we have to provide value for money, and of course we have to cut our cloth to what we have, and really sometimes clinically prioritize on what issues we're able to go do a deep dive on. That being said, we have been in contact, and we're in regular contact with Cabinet Office to look at how we may be able to get funding. What that looks like, how that will make a difference numbers-wise or delivery-wise, we haven't got an answer to that. But negotiations and conversations are certainly ongoing.
Okay, and thank you for that, Aodhán. And I suppose that's just your last point there is very interesting, maybe one for us to keep an eye on, Chair, in terms of the Cabinet Office funding and that ask, given the remit and the important work that you have to do over there. Aodhán, just in relation to engagement and input with the Irish Embassy and Irish MEPs, where I suppose is that at? And obviously I'm thinking of a strategic level in terms of even cross-border strategic projects. How does that come about, and what is the current level of engagement?
So we have a huge level of engagement both with the Irish Permanent and the UK mission. Obviously, the Irish Permanent representation to the EU takes a particular interest in Northern Ireland, and as again, quote Madal, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. So they will obviously be interested in anything that affects supply chains, north-south, etc. We also have someone seconded in to the Irish Perm Rep. That's been a long-standing arrangement, just as we have someone seconded into the UK mission to the EU. And to be honest, we're really lucky to have not only them seconded in, but put in areas that actually allow them to work with us on Windsor Framework, on trade, on other issues. On MEPs, of course, again, Irish MEPs will take a definite interest, and we have regular conversations with MEPs from Ireland. But as well as that, we will look at what strategically benefits Northern Ireland most. So, for example, the International Trade Committee, the Environment Committee, the Agriculture Committee, those areas where our departments and business and communities across Northern Ireland really take an interest, and things that affect them. We will very much lean into that sort of prioritised strategic view on who we engage with. We did a joint session with MEPs and with Scotland and Wales before Christmas, and that allowed us to talk to 60, 70 MEPs, a lot of whom who'd never had heard of Northern Ireland, but had never actually engaged fully on it. You got to remember that there was about a 60% changeover in MEPs at the last election. So to answer your question, relations with the Irish Prime Rep are very good. We're very lucky to have a strong relationship with them, similarly with the Irish MEPs, but we do engage strategically with a wide range of MEPs.
Thank you, Aidan. I suppose that was a very detailed breakdown and a quick run through a few different aspects there. Richard, I'm just going to quickly move on to yourself. And I know the last time we had discussed the fact that the US government still has not appointed a special envoy since Joe Kennedy's departure was 2024, 23, in around that. And obviously, I had Joe in my constituency on 2 or 3 occasions throughout his tenure, and he was absolutely brilliant, specifically nailing down a lot of the economic regeneration arguments. I think he got a lot of it. And unlike some special envoys and no doubt some other politicians globally, he got here, he got the North, he got its people. But just in terms of what a special envoy would mean to the Bureau in terms of that extra influence over there with stakeholders, could you maybe just expand on how that would help the Bureau, Richard?
Well, just to add to your support for Joe Kennedy III did an amazing job. Like he was absolutely fantastic, and that level of engagement at home across all parties, the amount of support he had was really astonishing. He was a fantastic envoy, as indeed many of the other envoys have had or have been. But the US ambassador to the UK, Warren Stevens, has also been a fantastic support, and even before he was appointed last St. Patrick's, played a key role in making those introductions for the Deputy First Minister, when she was in DC to connect with people. So the US system, we also have, of course, the US Consul General in Belfast, James Applegate, who has also been a fantastic supporter. I was talking to him just yesterday, and also gets Northern Ireland and the State Department to keep a close eye on things as well, and we represent. So yeah, it's always nice to have. It's always great to have another voice supporting Northern Ireland, particularly somebody of Joe's stature. But working with the existing systems and the really strong voices we've got within the US system can deliver the same results. And I'm very keen that we make as much as possible of the US ambassador's interest in his engagement and his knowledge and his connections to provide that exactly the same kind of service. Of course, you're competing with the rest of the UK in that sense, so you don't have the same special person, but you do have a really direct line into the various highest levels of the administration through the ambassador. And I think maybe for a small place like ourselves, being able to focus on a key contact like that and through the consulate can deliver the same kind of outcomes. But certainly Joe did an amazing job, and all support is always welcome, but the people we've got in place are also really effective.
Thank you, Richard. And I suppose just quickly to move on a point that has been made by yourself during this briefing earlier on. Obviously, the constrained financial position that I think obviously every department is in, every bureau is in, and having to take long-term calculated decisions on exactly what you're putting your money into. Obviously, given the huge area that you have to cover throughout the US and Canada, Richard, could you maybe talk me through exactly how you prioritise some of that funding depending on where you're going from city to city? I know you mentioned LA, and obviously its relevance to the screen industry and the film industry. San Diego, I think, is InvestNA's hub, possibly. Could be wrong on that. But just talk me through the protocols there.
Yeah, so it's really trying to find where the strongest points of connection for Northern Ireland are. So sometimes it's driven by the departments as well. So I think Aodhán referred to the engagement with the Department for Justice, who have been a really strong partner for us. So they were interested in Chicago because they felt that that's where they could learn most from. So we supported that visit. As you referred to, the screen industry and gaming means LA is strong in that regard. So we want to focus there. Atlanta, the Southeast, is a huge economic driver in the US, sometimes overlooked. Historically very strong on the Scots-Irish, Ulster-Scots piece. So that's why we're keen to do more there around the 250th anniversary. And I mentioned Nashville as well. So it has particular strengths in terms of medtech and health innovation. So we use the information we gather to prioritise and look at where's going to give the best impact for Northern Ireland. You know, we talked a bit about our plans for a cyber conference. That's because cyber is so strong here in DC. So we have to find a mixture of the place and the theme or the subject matter and put those two together. Canada is also something we talked about resources earlier. Longer term, I'd love us to do more in Canada. It's a huge market for us. The Invest NI team there is excellent. And you know, in terms of tourism, in terms of investment, there's a lot more we could do there. But again, that's where our resources do start to get a bit stretched. And it'll be interesting to see. I think somebody referred earlier to Prime Minister Carney's statement. You know, Canada is certainly playing an important role in the reshaping of the world order. So there's opportunities there. So it is a mixture of taking what's thematically strong for Northern Ireland and then finding the right vehicles to deliver that. Arts is something we haven't really talked hugely about in this session so far, but it's another big strength for us in terms of theatre, and we're working with the Irish Arts Centre in New York on a potential collaboration there as well. So it is about prioritisations, place and subject.
Just very, very small one there.
Thank you, Richard. And my last question, I'll be very, very quick, is just for you, Kerry. In terms of third level education and some of the MOUs that are in place with UU, Queen's, and some other educational stakeholders in China, just as you were speaking, Kerry, I tried to get a number of press releases up online. I read 2 of them, and to be quite honest, I came to the end of both articles and I really was none the wiser in terms of what type of agreements or, as I said, MOUs are actually in place between, I'm assuming it's our local universities here through DE and some of the Chinese universities.
Yeah, so thanks very much, and it is actually a great question because it isn't straightforward and it will differ greatly depending on what the potential outcome is from that relationship. So some MOUs that our universities will have in China will be reciprocal in nature, where they're doing some like a minimal amount of exchange. Some of them will be more on research engagement in specific areas, and where we actually have a deeper relationship where we're actually accumulating greater value will be where we have joint colleges. So some great example of that is the Queen's University, China Medical University joint Queen's College China. It's a very long title. In Shenyang, and that relationship has been very long in development. We have students that are in China taking university degrees, will be dual degrees, one from China and one from Queen's University Belfast. They are taught in Queen's University facilities in Shenyang, so they don't come to Northern Ireland at all, by Queen's University lecturers. They get their Queen's University degree and we have all of the value of that relationship without adding to some of the challenges that we have in our city centres around accommodation capacity, all of those things. So there's a whole range of relationships we have, and what is actually important to note is that I'd say that roughly from our figures, the Chinese Chinese students who come to Northern Ireland are worth about 50 million to our economy each year. So it's a really important relationship, and that doesn't include the Chinese students who study what's called 3-0, which is all of their years are in China.
Okay.
Very much, Kerry.
Thank you, Kerry. Sorry, I think we're going to have to move on. Just in the interest of fairness there, I think everybody got about 13 or 14 minutes.
Can I get a small question if possible? That's a quick one, Chair.
Very quick.
Aodhán, you had said about direction from the ministers. Can you just clarify, is that the First Minister and Deputy First Minister, or do you take direction also for the Minister for the Economy?
We take direction, or we direct Minister is the First Minister and Deputy First Minister. There will be executive lines that have been agreed on certain issues, and of course the Minister for the Economy will have input to those.
But it's a joined up approach essentially. It's not one minister feeding into giving you direction. It's either
No. My direct ministers are the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister. There will be certain areas where we monitor, which will be for other departments. Like I said at the start, we are the Office of the Northern Ireland Executive, rather than just the Executive Office in Brussels. So we will represent the various departments. But as far as what I do, what I deliver, we are part of the Executive Office. We feed into the Executive Office business plan, and our ministers are the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all for your time today and your briefing in advance, and we look forward to inviting you back to committee in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we've actually lost quorum.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will maybe just take a 5-minute comfort break then. Is that okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Thank you.
Committee Room 30. Sound. 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 Committee Room 30, 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 Sound. That's great, thanks.
Okay, welcome back, members. We're back with the right number of MLAs in the room. So I'm going to move on to item 8 of the agenda, which was to be the oral briefing from the Equality Commission for Northern Ireland on the Supreme Court judgment in for Women's Scotland Limited versus the Scottish Ministers. And just to advise members and the public who may be watching online that in light of ongoing sub judice issues, the committee agreed earlier today to postpone this evidence session to a later date to allow for a full discussion on the Supreme Court ruling. So, did you want to speak to that? Go ahead,
Yes,
please.
Chair, I did respond earlier on. I didn't want to postpone today's briefing. I took the clear view that this committee got evidence, legal advice before, that committee members could ask questions and it was up to the witness if they wanted to respond or not, and on that basis I think the Equality Commission should have come before us. At the end of the day, they have decided to intervene publicly. They've played an active role in issuing interim guidance for Women's Scotland judgment, and on that basis I believe they should have come before us. Let's look at Stormont, essentially, that we have issues that we need to raise with them. Women's issues matter, scrutiny matters, and on that basis of the toilet policy that we operate in this building, which allows anybody to determine their own gender to use the toilets in this building. That was something I wanted to explore with them today. I believe we're in breach of the law, and that was something that we could have cleared up today. They decided to intervene publicly. They have decided that they didn't want to come, essentially, and they said that it would be limited on what questions they'd be answered. And on that basis, non-answers itself is a form of accountability, and I would have been of the impression the session should have went ahead, and if they decided not to answer the questions, that should have been on them, but we still should have been given the chance to ask them questions.
I think that's, totally understand your viewpoint on that, but I think it is worth clarifying that they pretty much just came back to remind us of the sub judice context in which they would be giving evidence. So I don't think that they were going to refuse to answer them. I think it was because of the legal context. So I think we need to be fair to the Equality Commission. Go ahead, please, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. And I did support the decision to postpone this, not because I don't have serious questions for the Equality Commission, not because I fundamentally disagree with the action that they have taken, but they made fundamentally clear in the representations that they made to us that, one, they wouldn't discuss the process and the ongoing legal action at this stage, and secondly, that their appearance at this committee was on the proviso that the questions were only in relation to that matter. And while I share Timothy's concerns in relation to other issues that he's raised, they made clear to us in representations that they would not be giving evidence or providing responses on any issues outside of that remit. So once this process has ended, I think there are serious questions that both Timothy has raised, but also we will be in a clearer picture about, in my view, how much public funding has been used by the Equality Commission in what is a politically motivated attempt, in my view, to intervene on things that's outside their remit. But ultimately we'll be in a better place to question them once they no longer have the ability to say that issues are under legal consideration.
Any other comments? We're content to move on.
Can we just get formal agreement that we are postponing that? Just
okay,
for the
so
minutes.
as you know, the clerk wrote out to everybody by email this morning, and the consensus was that we would postpone the meeting, but I now need to seek formal agreement that we will postpone this session.
Great.
Okay,
I want
thank
to just
you.
note that my opinion was they should have came here today. Can I seek an assurance that as soon as they deem that they can answer the questions, that they're brought back in front of this committee?
Yeah, this is just a postponement. It's not a cancellation of the invite request to come before us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So item 9, correspondence. I'm going to refer you to pages 186 to 188 of your pack for the updated summary of committee correspondence. And I would just like to draw your attention to a number of items. 9.8, Committee for Finance, scrutiny of the draft multi-year budget for 2026-29/30. And you'll find this on pages 203 to 204 of the pack. Just to advise that the committee has received this correspondence from the Committee for Finance regarding the scrutiny of the draft multi-year budget for 2026-29/30. The Finance Committee is seeking views from committees on their respective budgets, departments' budgets before the 27th of February 26, as well as views from the department's 2025-26 budget position and management. Departments were supposed to have completed their 5-year departmental business plans by autumn of last year. However, these have not yet been published. This may be a matter for respective committees to review as part of their own scrutiny, as DOF had previously indicated that there would be rough estimated budgets attached to these plans. So I'm going to seek your agreement to note this item and agree to raise the issue of 5-year departmental business plans with officials when they come before us on Wednesday the 4th of February 2026 on the budget and the December monitoring round in that oral evidence session. Agreed? Okay, so just to remind you that any comments on the TEO draft budget should be sent to the clerk by Friday the 20th of February 26. Okay, thank you. 9.8, that's in relation to correspondence from an individual on the promotion of public transport, and you can find this on pages 239 to 241 of the pack. So this correspondence has been copied, individual has copied in Mr Jim Allister MP, and I'm just going to ask for your agreement to note this item and agree to write to the individual to say that these issues in relation to TransLink would be a matter for the Committee for Infrastructure to consider. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. 9.11 TEO Northern Ireland Executive's response to the COVID-19 inquiry Module 2 report, and you'll find this on pages 254 to 255 of your pack. And just to advise that the committee has received correspondence from TEO regarding the Executive's response to the COVID-19 inquiry Module 2 report. TEO is now seeking views of stakeholders on the implementation of the Module 2 recommendations. A series of engagement sessions, both in person and online, have been arranged, and details of the dates and times of these sessions are detailed within the correspondence. So I'm just going to seek your agreement to note this item and agree for the committee team to schedule an oral briefing with the Department's Civil Contingency Unit as part of the committee's April to July forward work programme. Okay, great. Okay, and I'm just going to ask the clerk to read some other items for noting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, 9.2 is a statement from First Minister and Deputy First Minister made to the Assembly on the 13th of January around the British Irish Council Summit in December 2025. The statement was also emailed to members on the 12th of January. 9.3 is the 52nd report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules from Assembly Legal Services, and just to make members aware, there are no rules for the attention of this committee. 9.5 is a statement to the Assembly again from First Minister and Deputy First Minister on the publication of the NI Executive's third response to the COVID-19 inquiry on Module 1 report recommendations, and this statement was also emailed to members on the 16th of January. 9.6 is a departmental response to correspondence from the committee on the 9th of October 2025 on the cost of the historical institutional abuse inquiry. 9.7 is correspondence from the First Minister and Deputy First Minister around the unveiling of the HIA Memorial, and that was on the 16th of January 26. 9.9 is the Big Youth Survey 2025 final report from the Northern Ireland Youth Assembly for members to note. 9.10 is a news release from the Department around individual wellbeing in Northern Ireland 2024 to 2025. 9.12 is a TEO office news release on Holocaust Memorial Day 2026, Bridging Generations. That was yesterday, just for members to note. 9.13 is the Hansard report of the committee's formal clause-by-clause consideration of the Inquiry Mother and Baby Institutions, Magdalene, Laundries and Workhouses and Redress Scheme Bill, which took place on the 19th of January 2026. And that is all of the correspondence.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody want to raise any matters in relation to any of those pieces of correspondence? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the draft work programme, so I'm going to refer you to pages 264 to 266 of your pack, and I'm going to ask the clerk to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind members that there haven't been any changes to the forward work programme, so next week the First Minister and Deputy First Minister are here for their first appearance with the committee this year, and there is then a draft oral budget, an oral session on the draft budget and December monitoring from departmental officials. The following week, Commissioner for Victims and Survivors has an introductory briefing, and also the Chief Scientific Officer has an introductory briefing, and then we have a briefing from Assembly Research as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Everybody content?
I'll just check, Chair, how long the First and Deputy First Minister are scheduled to be here for?
Scheduled for an hour, which would be the standard amount.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have a lot of ground to cover. I'll talk succinctly that today, no doubt. Okay, so any other business members?
I just wanted to raise one, just given the really important work that the office is engaged in currently in the United States. I assume it's usual practice that our chair would attend St Patrick's Day events.
Yeah, I've already indicated to the clerk that I won't be attending.
Okay.
I went the first year, but that was probably.
And just to say, Chair, there hasn't been an invite to date on that anyway.
Yeah.
So that's right.
Well, I think the first year there were certainly loads of invitations by this stage, and so. Okay, so date and time of next meeting. So that will be next Wednesday, the 4th of February at 2 p.m. in this room. So the meeting is adjourned.
Committee Room 30. Sound. Committee Room 30, Sound.